This is April Walker of Walkerwear, and you're checking out allhiphop.com. Yeah.
What's going on, world? It's Chuck Creekmer, number 13 of the All Hip Hop Podcast. And we got co-host Rose D, and we are here with the icon, the fashionista, the designer, the legend, April Walker. Hip hop.
Thank you for having me.
Is in the building.
Super excited.
Yeah, no, this is a long time coming.
Long time.
Yeah, long time coming. See, when I get around April, I get starstruck. I
was nervous. I was super nervous. She's like literally an icon.
Yeah. No, I totally freeze up.
Real people, so don't be.
That's
ready.
What's up. No, that's what's up.
But that's what makes you so dope, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I care. Because you're so dope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, she's definitely... I can hide it. She can't hide it. Yo, let's take this selfie. They're trying to be cool.
I don't know if you can hide it that well, Chuck, but...
No doubt. No, but thanks for coming here to One World Studios. So I guess we'll just kind of go and have a dope, free-flowing conversation. I've been looking at some of the interviews you've done, most notably the one you did with Noriega and Nori and Drink Champs. And, I wanted to ask you just sort of where do you think we are, fashion-wise right now? So you started in the 90s. Now, we'll get into all of that, and now it seems like a lot has changed.
It's changed.
Yeah. What's your perspective?
Well, I think nothing new is nothing true, and nothing true is nothing new. And with that said, I also feel like we've never moved through the digital era before.
Right.
And that changes the context of fashion when we think about it, when you think about technology and how we literally are living in two worlds, virtually, and then we're also living in real life, some of us. But it's just everything, especially in fashion, is influenced from somewhere. We get our imagination, our ideas, and the world influences us. We're living in this time where the metaverse is really big. These NFTs and all the things are almost like anime. And I see that in fashion now. Yeah. I see these superheroes in real life just in terms of fashion influences. I think when I started, things weren't genderless. It's very genderless now. Right. So, it's a plus to say that when you're selling fashion, it's unisex. Right. Anyone could wear it versus it was very men's, women's, when I started. So that's different. And I think technology is different. I literally can use an app to now see the way something fits on me without having to physically be there, right? There's 3D renderings. You can actually try different shades on without being there, right? To see how this fits my face. So all of that is interesting. We're using now liquid, and you can pour it on you and it turns into fabric. So you could do that now. Imagine what's coming. Yeah. So it's very different. Yeah, it's happening. Nanotechnology. So it's a lot that's changed. And I think that it's made it for me, a lot more creative because anything goes. Whereas it was very constricting in certain areas when it comes to gender, et cetera, et cetera.
So as far as the icons, when I think of the 80s or 90s, the first person that comes to my mind would probably, that stuck out the most with what she wear or what she didn't wear sometimes, Lil' Kim. I wouldn't really say Foxy, but she was out there. She just had more of a style, but Lil' Kim was kind of known. Aaliyah. Who would you say right now would be those icons, fashion icons?
Oh, that's a good question. Erykah Badu still is one.
She's fire.
I love how she puts it together, and it's very unique, right?
It's definitely her own style.
Yeah, I would say when I think about influence, style is so different now. Riri definitely, Riri is definitely. Her brand is the proof of it, right? Just in terms of, so she's definitely one of those icons. And there's a few. But it's just so different now. I think the thing that's very different from when I started too is women are so expressive now. Whereas when I started, like, it was almost taboo to, the stripper was taboo.
Oh,
now the stripper is like revered, you know, so that whole fashion is different, right? And it looks different. So I think it's just, it's how you see. So for me, I'm a little of both. While I really applaud the sexual, like, liberation and expression, I also am kind of old school, like, leave something to the imagination. So, you know, but Riri does it right every time. Like, and I love the way she goes from street to here, and she could take it and bring it both together very well.
When you were coming up, let's go back a little bit. When you were coming up, and I don't mean even hip hop, before hip hop, who did you look up to style wise? Who did you say, oh, she's fresh, or he's? When I was young,
that's a very good question. Well, Willie Smith was one of the ones that I loved. I wore his clothes a lot.
Okay.
In junior high school and high school, Willie Wear, you guys look him up.
I did.
Yeah, one of the black designers that were out, like 70s, 80s, and really one of the contenders of streetwear. And then I wore Gloria Vanderbilt a lot. Oh, wow. Yeah. That was, the Swan was big for me. Ralph Lauren, since forever for me. Like, I wore Ralph I just grew up on Azad and Ralph. Like, those were like go-tos. By the time I was in junior high school, I was wearing Lee's a lot. And Oshkosh and all of that.
Wow.
You know, all of those brands. Sassoon was a staple. Oscar de la Renta, Tahari, those are Christian Dior. Those were brands that I wore a lot in high school, I feel like.
You didn't actually grow up wanting to be in fashion, is that correct?
No.
When did the switch happen?
College.
Okay.
College. I was just always into expressing myself, but I was always hustling. So, you know, I started out as a teenager teaching gymnastics, selling pots and pans, you know, doing all the things, baby boy, before baby boy. And then by the time I was in college, I knew I didn't want to work for someone. I just didn't know what it would be. And then I walked into Dapper Dan's, and that just made so much sense for me because I was already living that culture of like skate life and all the clubs and hanging out. And I was at New Paul's at the time, and literally I was about Apollo Theater. I had everything. I had my school schedule plugged around my nights at Empire and Roxy's. Right. You know what I mean? So it was so real for me. So New York was like a canvas for inspiration in terms of that time, because that was the time you had like Lower East Side meeting up with hip hop, meeting up with, you could go to the coffee shop and see Madonna or Fab Five or, you know, all these people hanging out there, Jelly Bean, you know, like all of the, you know, so it was just really an interesting time, and we were all coming together, that skate culture, even surf. You know, because I was going to Magic early on, and it was like that West Coast was meeting up with the East Coast, and we were all young figuring it out. So I think it was really special. So all that inspiration was soaked up. And then when I walked into DAP, I was like, oh, there's nothing like this for my tribe in Brooklyn. I got it, like in my head.
Right.
That's what I want to do for BK, you know, because it was so different, right? Harlem is different than Brooklyn still, but then it was night and day.
So let's just real quick for a moment, because, you know, some people may not know. We know. And I'll never forget seeing Dapper Dan designs on albums and also in the streets, because even though I'm originally from Delaware, I went to Delaware State, and people from New York would come with what I think was Dapper Dan. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
I think so, but I'm not sure now that I think about it. But it was fly regardless. So can you just tell people a little bit, just for the record, what he meant to the culture?
Dapper Dan to me is the inspiration for a lot of the brands, in terms of, he was the first image that I remember seeing that looked like me designing, you know, besides Willie Wear. By now, Willie Smith, he might have been gone by then. He passed away. But in terms of like a hustle and being from the streets and doing it, like it was Willy Wonka, but for the fashion industry, and it was by us, for us, you know, so that meant everything to me. And it was doing something different, right? It was almost making fun of these fashion establishments that didn't want us to actually wear their stuff. They would follow us around in the stores. They would not have our sizes available. That's another way of saying you're invisible or we don't want your business, right? So being harassed, all these things. And now I know from Dap explaining, like he actually tried first to go work with these in the fashion industry and no, you know, so that made him start his own thing. I didn't know that at the time. I just saw it was possible because I saw him and I saw him doing it, and he brought Ghetto Fabulous in a fabulous way. And it was better than anything you could see on Fifth Avenue. So I wanted to do what I do in Brooklyn. Like I was already putting stuff together and we were already ripping up our jeans and doing all the things, but we couldn't get it in the stores. So I was like, all right, BK, let's go. You know?
At this time, though, hip hop wasn't even looked at as a brand, right?
No.
So how did you navigate through that? Like what, I mean, obviously, you know, our clothes represent the times and stuff like that, but how did you put that together?
With a retail store too, right?
Yeah, I started with Fashion in Effect. So prior to Fashion in Effect, I think when I look at my first inspiration, well, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I think about it now like, no, you actually had generations of that. Maybe not as what I perceived as sexy, but generations of like general store to this, to that, you know? And then my father was in the music business, and you guys know the music business is like this, right? And so he first managed a lot of jazz artists, and then he started working with R&B, D-Train. And then after that, by the time I was in high school, Guru moved across the hall from me. He moved from Boston. Guru. Yeah, he was my neighbor. So I got his first demo to my father.
Somebody else lived close to you as well.
Yeah, Easy Mo B lived in the next building. Like, so all of us were like in this huddle space, right? And then my father started, I gave my father Jazz's demo, and then he started managing Jazz and Jay-Z. So they were like, we all grew up together, figuring it out. I was still in the high school, right? And so by the time I was in college, I was like going to Zanzibar, going to Barnes International Broadway with Dad while he was managing these shows. And I was getting like bird's eye. Okay, this is how this goes. So I think I wanted to do something on my own, but I couldn't sing. So I knew that would be it, you know?
Yeah.
And so the bug hit me when it all came together because I was already hanging out. I had the customers just by the tribe, you know, and then this hip hop tsunami, I saw it coming through the insider perspective, right? Nobody else believed it that didn't live it. But I knew it was bigger than me and us, you know. So I was like, we can either make it or be left out, right? And this was my way out, too, because I really didn't want to work for someone else. So I think all of those things, I was going to school for communications and business. So that helped. So I started reverse engineered into fashion. I came from that side, like, all right, how do we put this together? The Rubik's Cube approach.
She said reverse engineered.
I know, I actually wrote that down. I actually quoted her on that. It's crazy, yeah.
That's what's up. So Walker Wear, talk, you know, when did you say, yo, I'm gonna do this?
Okay, so at Fashion in Effect, which was my first shop, right? 212 Green Avenue, shout out to Brooklyn. I started, I'm gonna date myself. I started in 87. And I was a junior in college, and literally it was a hole in the wall. We had a homemade sign, and literally that's how we started. But from that start, I remember Shinehead and Shaggy. They were all Brooklyn came through and rapped, right? So I started getting these, besides my base of 9-to-5ers, white collar, blue collar, all love. Like Easter was big for us back then, right? Really? Yeah, people came in for their Easter outfits. We were doing everything from denim to terry cloth you know, Kendu, Rasun, Kool-Aid, Peter Shoe, all of those guys would come and buy their tuxes for the galas, all of the things. So they really set the blueprint because a lot of artists were inspired by the hustlers in the street that were like grinding, you know. So we just had the best of all worlds. And it wasn't us per se. It was we were doing something that was needed because it wasn't out there, and B, that hip hop energy was a culture that was brewing, and it was energy feeding energy, right? And coming from an authentic place, I think when you asked that question before, and then I'm gonna answer the walk away, I think that the spirit of entrepreneurship really took hold in the 80s. Whereas before, the music was there, it was starting to pop. But by the 80s, I remember going to Fresh Fest at Madison Square Garden. I was in those roller skating rinks that were like all things hip hop. We were already buying the old English letters and putting them on. We were from Cruise, right? But that entrepreneurial level of thinking was kicking in the branches were like forming, right? What else could we do here? What else could we do? So I think once I saw Run-DMC on stage with them Adidas and those show toes and leather, I was like, okay, so that whole dress for success is a lie. That gave me the gumption to be like, this is big. With Walkaway, I was able to start because I listened to customers. And they kept saying over and over they wanted certain things that weren't being serviced. One was bigger pockets, deeper pockets, lower crotch. They wanted more space. They wanted certain things. Timbs were big, 40 belows. They wanted their pants to fit inside of there or outside. All of these things. And I was really inspired by workwear. So I wanted to take workwear and fashion and have that intersect, so that it could be sexy enough where you could wear it in the club, but classic enough where you could wear it to work. So I was also not into loud colors. And at that time in the 90s, it was very grimy, gritty, and very, very much not loud. So I wanted earth tones. And that's how literally we started. And at that time I was going to West Coast. People don't know I'm originally from LA. Brooklyn claimed me because I was there since a baby. Right. But by this time, my cousin, shout out to Diane Reeves, she was there, and when I was like 20, she took me to the Grammys or something, and I was there, and it was just like, okay, and at that time it was I wanted to come out there because of NWA. I saw them and I was like, oh, this hip hop thing is really, I want to see that culture. So when I got to LA and I saw that, I also had a customer, Valentino, shout out to him. He was from Chicago, had a detail shop in Chicago, but also was doing big business in LA. So I was shipping fabric out there because when I first started fashion, in effect, it was kind of like some adapt stuff, you know, doing the same thing, the leather to this. So we downsized to just all original styles. But that's really how, listening to our customers, they had pain points. We wanted to address them. And that gave me the gumption to start the Rough and Rugged suit, which was the first suit I did walk wear. And I think it caught on, that suit. People started asking for it over and over.
Well, you mentioned West Coast. We have to talk about how she was the only designer that got to work with both Tupac and Biggie. I mean, I'm sure you're tired of talking about it, but it's still, you know, it's a big deal. It's dope. Tell me how that worked out. Like, how did that come to be?
I first met Tupac on the set of BWP, Bitches with Problems. I'm taking it back.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was their stylist. So I remember I was styling this video, and Mark Sex reminds me. Shout out to Mark. that was his company, No Face, right? And so Ed Lover, Stretch, all of them. It was a whole crew in Queens. And they came on set. They were hanging out, and they had Tupac with them. And I don't know. Mark said, I don't know how, but y'all ended up syncing. And from there, I started working with him. I started styling him eventually. And then he did Juice, and Holler If You Hear Me. Mm-hmm. I did the outfits and that. Fire. And then we started working together. He was very intentional, and we were friends. He was very intentional about working with Black people, period. So he would go out of his way to try. Yeah. And then you asked about Tupac, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Biggie.
And Biggie, he was the first. So I knew Biggie from the neighborhood, but didn't know him. You know, you see him at the train, coming out the train. He'd be on Washington and Fulton. And then I came one day to work, and I was at my first shop, Fashion in Effect. And he walked by, and I used to put airbrush shirts in the window along with other stuff we'd sell, but he saw one, and I think it might have been Eric B. and Rakim, and he came in, and that started the conversation, and he found out my love for hip-hop along with my hustle, and that's how we started working together. He bought something, and he just kept building, and as he was growing, he was about 15 at that time. Yeah, he was young. So that relationship marinated over time, and when he got his deal with Biggie, he stayed true.
Fire.
What about Audio 2 and Milk and Gibbs? That seems like they have a very special spot.
Yeah. He was the first artist to come in my store. I think Light and Swatch, shout out to both of them, sent them to my store because they wanted to get some outfits made for their cover, I Don't Care. Yeah. And I think one of them said, go to Dap. And he said, no, we want a Brooklyn designer to make. And they said, oh, you got to go see this woman, April Walker. And they came in the shop, him and Guy Route. And shout out to Guy.
He goes back so far. I was like, yo, how far back do you go?
That's far back. Yeah. Like, they were both kids, and they came in like, can you do this and Giz? And I said yes, not knowing if I could or not, but like, yes. You know, never say no, right? You figure it out after. And so that's how it started. And luckily we delivered, we came through. And from that, I learned about styling because I had no concept, but they came back and they said, hey, you did a good job. We're doing a video. You want to style our video. This is before these big budgets we see now. Mm-hmm. Artists actually had to fight.
Yep.
To have a stylist in hip hop, you know, in the beginning, because they still didn't believe in it, or it was like, let's milk this situation in the beginning, you know, until it's proven. So a lot of artists fought in the beginning, and that's how we created an ancillary revenue stream with the styling division. So we ended up styling like everyone from, we work with Flavor Unit, Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature were our clients, Nikki D, and then other artists in Def Jam. We just Onyx, LL, Redman, EPMD. You know, a lot of artists.
Yeah.
Run-DMC. You know, styling.
Go ahead.
We just came off of Fashion Week, and I know I asked you earlier. I know in past years you didn't really participate as much, but this year you did, right?
I did. We did a special tribute with Ralph McDaniels and Video Music Box, and it was powered through Mayor Adams and also UHHM. And it was special because it was the first time myself, Dapper Dan, Carl Kanai, Fubu.
Crazy lineup.
And 4 new emerging designers, House of Swag and more. We all were under one roof. And it was special for me because it it really was for us, by us. Ralph McDaniels has been an unsung hero for fashion for many moons. He was one of the first to open a retail shop in Brooklyn that housed a lot of hip-hop brands. And he was also one of the first to celebrate us in the 90s through Fat Fashions, which was fashion shows like everywhere from the Supper Club on, where he actually just had black designers do the runway. So it was very nostalgic and inspired through that for him. And he did a great job. Like, it was historic for us because 30 years later, we're still here, but now we're all celebrating each other. So it was, and when you have your own people in the audience, it hits different.
It's a moment for sure.
You know, back in the day, hip hop was very innovative. You know, you would have your own style. You would, if you saw someone dressed a certain way, you try to do it different.
Right.
Also, there was no like hip hop styles. Like, you would co-op stuff and you would make it your own.
Yeah.
As time went on, it became, you know, you had marketing departments. Oh, we're gonna sell this. You know, there's ads in the source now telling you what you might want to, what you should wear.
Right.
Some of it was mad corny too, by the way. I should add. You being like, what is this? Like, I'm not doing this.
Right.
But, and now, fast track all the way to now, like, it's all being marketed. My question, I don't know exactly what the question is, but it's like streetwear is like normal now. It's
so commercialized.
Yeah,
now.
It's commercialized. What's your take on that in terms of the originality part, the, you know, uniqueness of it all? Like, I mean, do you have a stance on that?
Or the opposite.
Yeah, or the opposite. Because like sometimes I'm like, yo, these people all look the same. Everyone looks like exactly the same.
I think that is a good question. I think that it's like the society we live in now. I think with any form of self-expression, when corporate America figures out they can make money off of it, they dilute it, they exploit it, and there's very little trace of the art form left, right? With that said, I think right now hip-hop is hip-hop in the sense of we've become pop culture, and it's worldwide, it's global. You can see the effects, and you can hear it in music, and you can see it visually, aesthetically around the world, our influence, right? From what we do and how we do it, right? The way we dress. But as a creator, I feel like it's still there. I feel it's just different. And I feel like, just like with the music, we're being programmed certain music, right? And so those are the visuals you see. But I feel like we have to dig through the crates to actually hear it musically, because there are dope artists out there. And then I think we have to dig through the crates and find it visually. But there are a lot of creators that are not, I'll just say, on Instagram, you're not going to see much of your feed anymore, especially if it's a small business or a black and brown creator. So I think we got to do the work and extra work to support each other and to find that creativity, because you're going to be, other programming is happening in real time.
I saw something on IG, and it was like, I forget the brand, but they had these sagging pants, super sagging pants, but it was couture.
Couture?
Right, couture. How do I say it? Am I saying it right? Couture. And we were just like, back in the day, it was ghetto or whatever you want to call it. And now it's high fashion. What, like, do you have a...
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. And so we're like, what is it? Is it art? You know,
there's appropriation and there's appreciation, and I could respect the appreciation more if we were participating in the appreciation with revenue stream. Right. I don't need you to go ahead and take the style and say, okay, now we get it, and we don't participate. Right. I think there has to be a bridge, and that bridge has to be intentional. It's almost like reparations, you know, like it's the same kind of space, you know. So when you think about it like that, the intentionality has to be better. And then on the other side of it, while we're doing inside work, we also need to be more intentional about supporting our own tables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the Jewish community.
Any other community.
Basically, yeah.
When you walked away at one point,
mm-hmm.
what was going on with you then?
Burnout.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just being tired. I started at 21 and literally didn't have the tools in place per se because I was a grinder. So I literally like full days, every day, all day, pay yourself last, all the things not to do, I did, you know, just because sometimes when you're chasing a carrot, especially young people, not all young people, but a lot of us think we're invincible when we start, especially when we're young. And we think, and I know y'all know this, whether you admit it or not, being young, and being older, you know, you've been there. You're like, by I'm 25, I'm going to be this. By the time I'm 35, I'm going to have this. Oh, by the time I'm 40, it's going to be this. And life would throw you swerve balls.
Yeah.
You ain't lying.
So, trust me.
You ain't lying.
Live a little bit and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? It's always swinging with aim. But sometimes you have to keep your mind and your spirit and your body in alignment. And that's the toughest act in life, period. Yeah. But not having the tools and just like going after this dream, like, I'm going to slay these dragons every day. If you don't have the tools and you don't have enough self-care in process, there's going to be a point where you're like, I can't anymore. I've been self-financed my whole life, you know, so that's a whole different experience than working with a big fashion house that is backing you. Yeah. You know, it's a whole different an entrepreneurial experience that if you're an entrepreneur, you get it. You never have cash, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's always tied up in the assets that you're building. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all of those things. And honestly, if I'm really honest, I saw the commercialization of hip hop and fashion, particularly at that point. It was something that I didn't like at that moment. Mm-hmm. It became oversaturated. It still is, but it was really just at the height of a circus to me. It became a circus, and the exploitation was like, I saw the beginning of the end, and it was falling in love with something and falling out of it is two different things. And I wanted to keep my spirit more than anything. The other thing was everyone was celebrating Walkaway at that moment. But on the inside, I felt like the weight of the world. I don't know if you know what I mean. As an entrepreneur, everybody thinks you're on top, but you're like, man, I got a LA showroom, a New York showroom. I'm paying this. I'm doing this. The operations is crazy. So it might look like you making this, but Don's, it's like, and I'm working 15 hours a day.
How did you get back from that?
Well, I took the time. You know, it was a choice of me walking away and finding April, because I really never had that pause moment. I went from college right into the grind of saying, do I walk away and make sure I keep myself intact? Because if I didn't walk away, the other thing that was really on my mind was I had already, coming into fashion, I felt like an outlier. I still don't feel part of the club, but I didn't come in for fashion. You know, I came in hip hop and reverse engineered. So I never looked at the fashion industry to qualify me, right? But because you're in business, as you grow, you do certain things, right, in the fashion industry. And I just found myself in the music industry. It became something that was I don't know, you guys, if you ever saw Devil's Advocate, there's a scene where she's in the dressing room and she's getting dressed and she's looking at everybody and they look like demons. And it wasn't to that point, but it was definitely like you dealing with some different spirits. And I felt like I needed to protect my spirit and make sure that was all intact. And if you don't leave, your spirit might change. Right. So that was it, like, for me, like
bars.
You know, so that's what happened for me. And it was the best decision I could have made, because, you know, you got to love yourself first. and you can't let like the perception of what it looks like
get to your head, right?
Right. You got to be true to yourself. And so that was a big moment for me. I did that, and I started some other entrepreneurial businesses. I started a pet business. I just took time with nature and God and really just dug into all the questions, and self-care began that whole journey of like being tight on working out and, spending more time with God and just communing with myself, because I had none of that time. So it was golden for me. I found April.
I'm going to be a little nosy and ask, so how was your dating life throughout all this? Because you're a woman, you have this business, and you're basically doing it by yourself. Did you even have time for that?
In and out. Yep, I did. But it was always secondary because my first love was my business. It was really just when you're so tunnel vision on that dream, so that takes precedence. And being young, that was the precedence for me building, And then I think when I came off the high, I needed a moment to just kind of sit back and just get into April, and kind of talk to God. So it's been, highs and lows. I've dated some, and it's been great. I've dated artists, and I've dated, people that weren't artists, but I think sometimes the same thing you think you love is the same thing people can't handle. So, the same thing that attracts people to me is the same thing as an entrepreneur. And they're like, well, wait a damn minute. And you're like, you knew this was me
right.
before,
yeah,
right?
It's not
me. Right, yeah. Exactly. I think you have to be so secure with yourself, first, right? And love yourself and have a life. And if that's the case, it's a possibility. But if not, and I'm not chasing anything. I saw something that said, flowers don't need to chase the bees. That was deep.
Love it.
I like that. I have a question about your logo. Who designed your logo? Did you design it?
I had two designers. One, shout out to Herb. And then there was another designer back in the day that did Walkaware. I gave them first inspirations on both. Like I knew I wanted this to be abstract, this WW.
Okay.
And I wanted it to be almost like a tagline. Yeah. But then I wanted the two W's for Walkaware, right? A lot of my inspirations when I think about, like I said, I reverse engineered. So coming out with Walkaware, at first I assessed Ralph Lauren and Nike, right? Those were the two strong brands for me that had impact in my life then in terms of businesses they built from fashion. So both of them had the RL, the Polo Horse, and Ralph Lauren. Nike was Nike, and then they had the swoosh, right? So I wanted Walkaware and I wanted an icon, right? Something that was just, so the WW was that for me. And that's kind of where it came from. But it was very, to me, I love abstract art, and I wanted it to be hip hop inspired. So both of them kind of come from that premise. But the artists have to get the credit. I didn't draw those.
Okay. No. Yeah. I'm a logo fanatic. Yeah. I love logos.
Ditto.
Yeah.
As a designer, what changes do you see in the models from where you started to now?
Oh, I see them genderless. I see a lot of, I see a lot more of us, which is nice to see. When I first started, I didn't see any of us.
There was like one, Naomi Campbell,
and there were a few. There was Beverly,
Johnson.
Beverly Johnson, and there was also Iman.
Yeah.
And there had been some before, but like literally like. To find, right? Yeah. And I'm seeing full figures.
Yeah. Even the men, by the way, I'll be like, yo, yeah, man.
Yeah, so you're seeing more of us, and that's nice to see it. So that's different to me. And now we're showing bodies, real people, whereas before it was very stick figure, almost like you had to look like, I remember in the 80s, there was a period where everyone almost looked like a drug addict.
Yeah, their diets was drugs.
But even the look was very, rock and roll was considered to be like, you had to look a certain way. And it wasn't healthy, So I think it's nice to see all different people walking the runway now.
So, yep.
So I'm going to rattle off a few names, and I want you to, if you will, tell me what they mean to you and Walkaware. Mike Tyson.
monumental. The Mike Tyson experience, for me, is one of those pinnacles or the cornerstones and like the highlights for Walkaware. When you think about how far you would take it, I never imagined being in the heavyweight ring with Mike rocking WWs and being the first fashion designer. You know, before that we had sports brands like Everlast, etc. But there was Grant, but there was fashion. I think I broke that mold. So that was really a big moment. And him being from Brooklyn, me being from Brooklyn, it was very special.
Definitely.
Had to be.
My favorite.
I wish I was there.
Yeah, it was like one of those goose pimple moments when you're sitting there watching it like, wow, it's surreal. It was dope.
What about, we talked about Pac and Big. What about LL Cool J?
LL Cool J. It was cool for me because outside of Run-DMC, Jonathan, well, I work with Mark Sex and BWP, but there weren't a lot of like Queens brands that I have really, and LL Cool J was since Lacey's Skating Rink. I would see him when he was young in there, you know, in Encore or, you know, those spots. But in terms of working with him, I never worked with him. So Pink Cookies, that video, we did that. And we also did his tour. And that was a really big deal for us.
Yeah. What about the FUBU moment? You spoke about that. What did that mean to the culture for you?
It was everything because FUBU they broke barriers, you know. They took what Cross Colors did to a new level. Yeah. And I love their name. It was for us, by us. Right. And I felt like that's unapologetic. It's a bold statement. And just to be embraced in that way, it brought us into mainstream in a bigger way. Yeah, so definitely. It was huge.
Did you work with Jay-Z?
Jay-Z, he wore my stuff and different. He wore it in one video. What's the meaning of life? I can't.
Oh, okay. That was one of the early ones.
I can't sing. I told you.
Right. Yeah. You're all right, though.
No, I didn't. You knew what I was talking about. My sister actually did backgrounds for that, but I worked with him a few times, and there's a few videos out there with Walkaware, and he repped it. So, and he referred us. I remember Positive K sharing a story about his first. I guess he was coming to New York to do a video, and I was listening to the podcast and heard it, and I never knew it. And they said that Jay-Z was in DC. And I guess he told him I'm coming to do this video. And he was like, oh, you got to hit up this girl in New York, April Walker. She can make... And that's how I did Positive K's video. Right. But he didn't share that story at that moment. I found out after. So, you know, it's that ripple effect.
Definitely.
How about BDP?
BDP never worked with them. But mad respect for them.
They had, though... But so were they...
I worked with Hakim.
From Channel 9?
Okay. That's kind of connected.
Yeah, that's really connected.
Yeah.
For real.
Hakeem is still around.
Yeah, I still work with him.
No, that's
he still performs with them.
Yeah, no, definitely.
He performed in at Barclays recently, and he had it on.
I was there.
Yeah, so he has some Walkaware on there, but I never actually KRS.
The knockoffs. You had significant knockoffs, right? Like, even like Carhartt, did they kind of circle around and start, or was it? No,
actually, I would say I was influenced by Carhartt and by Dickies. And by, there were a few brands. Like I said, workwear was a big thing. We just did it our way.
They definitely started marketing different.
Oh, they started marketing. I think people saw the marketing and stuff. Yeah, we can take a lot of credit for the marketing. And when I say we, it's a few of us.
I would argue that you created the formula.
Yeah.
You get like the formula that everybody following you.
That product placement, definitely we were one of the first to implement that. And I would definitely say that. I remember getting letters from MTV and BET like, we will no longer let your logos go without you paying, or that's where that whole, you start seeing that fuzzy, blurred, that came. And I heard Dap in an interview, and he was saying the same thing. So I always thought it was me, but see, they probably sent one to me, Carl Dap.
Right.
But we think that's what hip hop does. We didn't have the money to compete with Tommy or with so we were the culture. So it was easy access. You didn't have 9 layers to go through to get to the artist.
Right.
So
you're still around. You're still doing it. I have a few hoodies of yours.
All right.
Yeah. You got some dope product, and the quality is dope too. So I be like, when I wake up, I got to put on a hoodie, and it's got to feel right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Thank you.
So tell us about where you are now.
We're still here in the building. I'm very grateful. We're in the conversation. We're global. We sell online. And do pop-up experiences. We have everything from sustainable. What I'm wearing is sustainable fashion to actually we still do raw denim, which is very influenced from our rough and rugged, just a different fit these days. We do a lot of active wear. My whole thing is taking comfort and making it fashionable now because we're living in an age where coming out of the pandemic, that showed us we can be comfortable and still get it done. And I think we're still in that kind of culture of wanting to be comfortable, fly, but we could be at home working or we could be out in the street. So that's my sweet spot right now. And it's lifestyle. And I really lean into that while we are doing some custom and some couture pieces. It's more that. And we have started women's again. And I'm really excited because women, y'all are really, really supporting. I love y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all, it makes so much sense when you think that Macy's has like 7 floors for women and like there's 1.5 for men. Now I get it, y'all.
Are you still styling?
Not so much. I mean, I have here and there, but not a lot anymore. It's a whole nother grind.
Some of these young,
some people need help. Some people need a little help.
Yeah.
There'd be a clown show sometimes, man.
Yeah. I would love to do certain projects. I've been doing a lot of, our work is doing a lot of storytelling now. So museums, internationally, domestically, we're participating in a lot of shows.
You're in a museum right now.
Let's
talk about that. That's major.
The Fresh, Fly, and Fabulous. Yeah, 50 years of hip-hop style.
Yeah,
it's big. Yeah, shout out to Elena and Liz and the whole team. And that's just a great exhibit to see, you guys. And I think it leaves April 23rd. So I don't know when this is dropping, but if you get it.
We're going to get in there before that.
Yeah, we got to see it. But it's a whole history lesson, so it's good. And all these stories you hear, you can actually visually see it when you go. So it's special. I think we have that audio 2 piece in there that we just talked about.
So when you go back, we're talking 50 years of hip hop. So when you go back, the earliest days of hip hop, like disco,
right?
And then you got Grandmaster Flash, and then they got Spikes, and then you got Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation, and they got everything.
Right.
What do you think of that from a fashion perspective? And then and then Run-DMC, they bring it down to leather.
Right. The whole.
And Melly Mel was mad at that.
Right.
Well, I'm like, I still can't afford a whole leather outfit.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's still out of reach for regular people.
Right.
He was mad at that for some reason. But anyhow.
Right.
I don't know what the question
is. I think different. So it's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
A, and B, we're not one-dimensional as a people, so we all have different styles to be able to express ourselves differently. And I think just like the world, that's what it is. But in a bigger sense, you also touched on different times in history with those people. Yeah. So you're watching the evolution in real time in terms of style and how it was changing. And I think it was also symbiotic with the music, if we're listening to the music. And now we're getting into visuals where we didn't have MTV and we didn't have video. We had Video Music Box, but globally, once we could see things visually, I think things started to be a lot more conformist based versus individualistic, if that makes sense, because the rest of the world could see at one time. So white t-shirts, okay, we're doing that around the world, let's go. You know what I mean? Versus in the hood, you would just had to figure it out when you couldn't see everybody else.
What about Daylight? I'd never forget going to school dressing like Daylight.
Oh yeah, a whole moment, that renaissance. So,
but it was unique, even
so
still,
unique,
right?
Still,
yeah.
They to me, I just did a little thing about Daylight, and I think them Jungle Brothers and Moni, there was a whole crew to me that they just disrupted in that moment in hip hop, right? It was like, no, this is what we're doing, and it was just a whole different look. At that moment, I felt like it was kind of like the hippies for hip hop, but I loved it. Right,
kinda like what the backpackers are to us, right?
Yeah, kind of that.
Kind of like that. It's kind of not really, but it's kind of it's the same vibe, but it's the different. It's a different look.
Because they were still part of our tribe, and they were like, like those are our people, but they just do it a little differently, right?
Yeah,
and that different caught on around the world, so they created that movement.
It's kind of, some people say Wayne did that too with the skateboarders, but to me it was more like Lupe Fiasco.
Yeah, Lupe doesn't get the credit. I would give Lupe credit first.
The kick, for sure, because he was the first person I saw do that. You know.
I wanted to ask you about the Virgil situation, Virgil Abloh. 2 parts. Like, is it over? Is it done? And secondly, how do you feel about that in hindsight? With his untimely passing, obviously.
Well, first of all, I would say my heart went out to his family and his fans, because that caught us all off guard, and it was horrible. You know, I don't like to see anybody, especially he had such a legacy, and he has a legacy, thank God. So that was heartbreaking. Of course, I didn't foresee that. And my basis for that was different, but we have resolved it.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty to discuss it, but I am glad I took a stand.
Yeah. When we talk about corporate forces, I mean, we were talking offline before the camera started rolling. And I was, talking about all hip hop's plight. Like, when we started, you could get the top of the food chain,
right,
for an interview. 20 years later, I'm not going to name names, but let's just say your biggest media outlet now wants to talk to those same artists. Now you can't. How do you feel about that from a fashion point of view? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is, now you hear rappers talking about Louis and Gucci and Balenciaga, and I'll be like, why are we bigging these brands up? They don't do anything for us. In fact, they probably hate us for the most part. Like, respectfully. Of course, you got to respectfully at the end. But seriously, most of and they definitely used to hate us.
Right.
That's a fact.
Right.
Do you ever feel a way about and don't get me putting words in your mouth, but the lack of support? But as a community, it is a lack of support, right? So you might have a rapper that wears your stuff, but the community at large is still fiending to buy those brands. Yeah.
I think when it comes to our own community, we just have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just fashion. Fashion is definitely included, but we could probably talk all hip hop. We could talk a lot of things. And I think that when we realize that we are the creators and the makers and the kings and queens of all things, like, we'll embrace that and stop running from it. Right? I think that when you think about everything you see from Louis Vuitton to et cetera, trust me, there are some black and brown people behind it making that wheel go around with all that fly stanky stank that you see. You know what I mean? That's real talk. But you wouldn't know it because of how it's sold to us, right? And nothing for nothing, I'm not saying there are a lot of we're all creators, and there are a lot of creators of all colors. But when it comes to dynasties and empires that are already established that are making money off of us being the biggest consumer spenders in the world. We spend over $1 trillion a year. If we took 1/10 of that, what we're spending, and spend it in our own communities, we can employ every man, woman, and child in our communities ourselves. This is the only community where the dollar floats less than 6 hours in the community, whereas the Jewish community, etc., is 30 days, like 20, 30 days. That's a big difference, so we've got to do better. So versus putting the onus on those other companies, I'm going to throw it right back to us. And say, let's be more intentional, because I think it's a microcosm of a bigger issue, and that's our country. Our country sells us, brainwashes us in a lot of ways. And the bottom line, all I'm saying is, y'all, we got magic. We are magic. And if we support our own magic, go ahead. You can spend a little bit outside, but spend more with your own. Like, that's how we build. Like, everybody else has their own tables. We need our own tables.
How can you top that?
I don't know.
She put me in my bag, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Was there any moment? Well, you kind of said this, but
go ahead.
I can't say it. I can't. I'll just say some of the brands were corny.
Okay.
I won't name names because some of them were black owned. I don't want to disparage anybody. Or maybe they weren't corny. Maybe they just weren't what we were into.
Right. That's how I look at it now. Yeah. Like, because I've had some duds, meaning like I've had things like that's not going to pop, and it became huge, But what that does is humble me to know that, okay, so something's just not your cup of tea. Right. And it also makes me realize, like, okay, my style is my style. And I see other people that I'm like, okay, that's different, but they wearing it, you know what I mean? And they owning it. So you like, okay, now I get it. It's just like, we're all coming out in these costumes, and it's how you feel about it that day. Right. And so I respect the nerd look that dude just did that thing. You know what I mean? And it just is all different. And so that's where it's at now.
How do you decide what you're going to wear for the day?
How I feel.
Yeah. How'd you feel today?
I felt like, you know what, I'm going to all hip hop. I'm going to be all hip hop. I love it,
Do people look at you like a star when you walking down the street?
It depends. It depends. Some people that notice will come up to me and say, what's beautiful is to get all these flowers now. So that I will say, especially like, again, from your own tribe. And so, I hear a lot now, like, thank you for all your contributions. That's and that's very surreal to me, just because I just been living it. Right. You know what I mean? So now it's like, wow, I'm the OG, but it's real though. And I appreciate it all.
So AllHipHop's 25 this year.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
That's been a journey.
Listen, this is the first year I've actually taken a pause and look back and let people say nice things and you accept it, as opposed to no, we all good. We all
that's growth and maturity.
Right. I know, I would imagine that's how it feels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You just learning to like soak up and be in the present more. Because
you always in that wheel.
And I think when you're younger, you have, I know for myself, especially being a woman, being young, when I started, it was all male dominated. There were no women. So I was very intentional about the way I dressed, like not, you want people to see you here, all the things. And so I feel like I didn't take compliments well when I was young.
What would you say? Would you deflect?
I would deflect, young. Like young hip hop, it was misogynistic. It was so many things, so it was like, let's make sure we stay on this business, like that. You didn't say it, but that was the kind of, you would have got from me, intention, but it's changed. You're like, now I can take a compliment, and that's growth, where.
Who hit on you?
No, we're not going to talk about that.
Everybody, you can tell. Come on, that's not even. Is that a question? Right, I'm sure everyone who came into that store hit on her. They had to shoot their shot. They had to give it a try. I mean,
I'm sure.
That's what men do.
Yeah, they're gonna try it.
That's true. So I had to ask.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
What's your most memorable, I guess?
What was your...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
What was your moment? What was your apex moment?
I don't know if I had an apex. I mean, I had a lot of them. That's what I'm saying. Okay. I would definitely say that we said Mike Tyson. That was one of them. I could say I remember being across the street from Empire State Building, walking across the street one day and seeing a guy across the street. And we had just gone into merry-go-round. Which was a really big deal at that time because they were huge. Merry-go-round was huge. They were at like 1,200 stores around the country, and we just going in, and I saw a guy walking with one of the shirts on that we put in the store, and I'd never seen like just I knew people that wore it, but just to see somebody random, I'm like, yeah, we made it. That's how you feel.
It's like merry-go-round was big. I used to be in the mall.
Right. And that's why we sold them because like in New York, okay, we have New York, but there were these pockets around the country where they didn't have access to it. So we needed to be in certain malls in certain parts of the country.
That's fire.
All right. So here's I know we're wrapping up, but I got to ask you.
Go for it.
Your top 5 dead or alive MCs and... No. Let's do it different. Top 5 dead or alive fashionable MCs.
Oh, I'm not fashionable. I'm not good with top dead because they're not going to be in my top 5. So
who?
I mean, so okay. So do they have to be like fashion fly?
Well, they don't have to be.
Because then I can't say anybody.
What?
I'm keeping it fun. No, I'm just saying, like, not like that, but it's like, it's people putting it on right now, fashion wise, but I don't necessarily gel with their music.
Okay, all right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So so just do the music. Just do top 5 dead or alive MCs.
Okay. So, and then we could talk fashion after, though. Okay. We could do that. Top 5 dead or alive. So I'm just gonna say that I might change it tomorrow because you got me off the dome. Okay. And there's so many in my head, but
we could give you a couple extras.
Okay. All right. So if I could take a couple of extra, I'm gonna say when you talk about fashion and music, Salt and Pepper is in my top 5. Definitely. Because they were impactful and disrupted with fashion to me. When you asked me earlier about Little Kim, for me it would be Salt and Pepper because they were before that. And for me, and no disrespect, Little Kim, you definitely been a game changer. Love you to death. But coming up, I remember being in college and hearing their response to Dougie Fresh and stuff, and all of that, and then watching their climb, and then when they started like with the unitard and their Dapper Dan and the kente cloth, that was fashion. That poster was up in my store, Fashion in Effect. And then I remember when they did Let's Talk About Sex and Independent Woman, just like what they were talking about, as well as being able to spit. And then they produced Black Magic, that album, which was game changing because they're putting on a different hat now and they're giving you fashion in a different way. They did something different. Janet Jackson is someone else who does different every time.
TLC too, right?
TLC too. But when I think about album progressions, like they were like, to me, the very, very monumental. So I would say them. TLC was just dope. When I think about Rakim, Eric B. and Rakim, I have to put them up there. Biggie, Pac, they would be on my list.
And by the way, Pac would wear stuff like tight leather and didn't think it looked crazy to us back then.
Right.
Now I look back like, I don't know. I don't think I could do that.
Right. He was definitely taking chances back then. And he was moving, I think right before he passed, he did a runway Versace show. So he was like, moving into that space hard. I would say J. Cole now is one. Kendrick is definitely one.
Kendrick pushes boundaries.
I love him for his content. And if you look at his visuals, they're bananas. Most Def, Yazin Bey. Yep.
Yeah.
He's definitely one for me. He just does it being from Brooklyn and what he's talking about, spitting. There are a lot, new cats. I love Skyzoo's new album.
Shout out to Skyzoo.
Yeah, Skyzoo.
That's my boy.
Torre. They're in the cut. Dylan Cooper, he's underground, but there are cats that are doing it to me that just aren't, you might not know them, but listen to their music.
Yeah, Torre always has a fly fit on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still love it?
I do.
Yeah.
I love the community more than anything, and I feel like I'm still here. A big part of me is still being here with Walkawares for representation. I think we have to redefine what success looks like. I don't think it's all about just the bag. A bag is nice, but I think that we need to know that we can sculpt our dreams. We can be independent, and to do what you love first. And the profit, like passion plus purpose equals profit, period. It will come. It's never on your time. It's on God's time. But I've been there where you're getting big checks and you hate your life and you don't want that either. So you want to make sure that you're just doing your life assignment. And that's a conversation with you and God.
Definitely.
What can we look forward to with Walkaware?
With Walkaware. So right now with Walkaware, we're in 50 years of hip hop. We have new drops coming. Fall is going to be really nice. We have summer going on. We're also going to be doing a fashion show in September in Fort Greene Park.
Nice.
For Fashion Week. I'm excited about that. And just a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on. A lot of drops on this year with 50 years of fashion. I can't speak, but there's documentaries, there's different things. A lot of stuff where Walkaware will show their face, and movies. So I'm really excited about all of that. And then as well, I dropped an online course. I'm in the middle of it right now, and I'll come back and I'll have another one for fall. Next year, we're launching a digital academy lifestyle, and I'm really excited about that as well. Really exciting.
Tell us about that. So it's going to be like another online course, or
online courses next year, right? But I started one called the Brand DNA, how to kickstart a fashion brand with success. And it's really teaching you the fundamentals and the foundation of what's needed to start a brand versus thinking product or marketing or sales. Like, if you want to go to distance, here's some jewels, and then giving you that blueprint, walking you through it with that experience and knowledge. And it's actually, actionable items and work to do. So you have a blueprint. So I'm doing that. I've taught the last 12 years from middle school through college, everything from Parsons to NYU with Clive Davis to shout out to Brooklyn Academy of Global Finance, and I teach something called Build Your Own Brand with Milk D from Audio 2 now. And so we teach about entrepreneurship and letting them see those images of ourselves. We got to do a trip up here so they can just see you guys and see this is possible. Anything that from Minds to Marketplace, what we creating, that's the class.
That's so dope.
And I want them to see that. So the younger we get young people to think as creators versus going into this hamster wheel of being a worker bee. And there's nothing wrong with worker bees, but I think we should have choice. And if we know we have choice, a lot of our education system isn't set up that way.
That's a fact.
That's your way of reaching back down. If we had more people who, did stuff like that.
It's really important.
Are you able to talk about your movie
placement?
I can talk lightly. So I'm shout out to the Transformers.
Woo!
It's coming, and I'm really humbled that we have a part in that. Yeah. So I'm going to have my popcorn ready.
Right. Me too. I'm going to have to actually go to this one. Right? I haven't been to a Transformer movie
and it's exciting. It's all, so the director is black. The costume,
right. The same guy from Creed.
Yep. Shout out to Steven
Capleton.
That's it. Mm-hmm. And then his wife is fabulous, and they're having a baby right now too. Yeah. Shout out to them. Shoot. But she's a costume wardrobe, and she did the costume wardrobe along with her team, and then there's also Toby is starring in it.
Nigwe from the rapper.
Mm-hmm.
For football player turned rapper.
And it's nostalgic. You guys are gonna love it. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but everything I've heard, I'm in. Like, I want to see it now. I'm really excited.
That's dope. So,
that's full circle, right?
Yeah.
It's just so full circle.
But that's where representation matters on the inside. You know, sometimes we might say stuff about Hollywood, but when you see like a Public Enemy, you know, like Michael B. Jordan, Coogler, and Cableton, they all kind of run in that same circle. So he'll go do Transformers, and then Michael B. Jordan will do Creed.
Right.
And, you know, the two of them, Michael B. Jordan and Coogler, did Fruitvale Station. Mm-hmm. And, you know, all those little things matter big time. Yeah, so
connecting the dots.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you.
We finally did it.
Yeah, finally.
Let's let them know where we can find you on social media.
Okay, so let me just say first, to both of you, you guys are great at the conversation. Y'all know y'all been doing this
and
a minute,
cut
right?
You off like
I know you were great. Yeah. Oh, I'm not gonna go there.
I had to say it.
Dang, Chuck.
Right? No, it was a dope interview. I really appreciate you. I love what you're doing for the culture. Mm-hmm. Keep doing it. 25 years is no small feat. Like, I've seen you. I know your grind. I know it's not easy. Being a black man in this business, doing what you do.
Thank you.
I know it takes a lot of tenacity, a lot of determination, a lot of good, positive self-talk in your head of reminding yourself of who you are. So I see you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being so gracious today.
Thank you for coming. I'm excited. I'm still excited.
So, yeah.
I had to have Rose here.
So the rose was a nice cat, and those flowers are beautiful. So you can find me, guys, at walkerwear.com. You can find me at IamAprilWalker.com. You can find me on Instagram at IamAprilWalker and at WalkerWear, WalkerWear. And just sign up for our newsletter, because we are going to be coming with more courses, and next year is going to get even bigger and better. I'm so excited to drop gems upon gems.
I'm definitely going to take that course.
What was that book you had? Walker Gems.
Walker Gems, Get Your Ass Off the Couch. Right. And that's available on Amazon and walkerwear.com.
That's a fact.
What video were you in? I read that. I read about
that. I was in Pink Cookies just slightly. Okay. Me and Tracy Waples, and then I was also and I was also in the MC Light.
Oh, paper. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Big Said?
Mm-hmm.
Big Head, Big Said. Are you taping this? Big Head, Big Said.
What's up, Said? Yes. Tuffy. It was Tuffy, me. Okay.